Alright, hello again guys. Here is the second video in my tips and tricks for the new patch of Wildfrost. This video will go over what I think about when I'm taking each of my turns and playing each of my cards, which honestly is the most important part of the game. Now, you'll notice if you watched my last video, I didn't actually show the first battle, just because I think the first battle isn't or essentially it's too basic for me to cover all of my thought process, and I kind of just autopiloted it. And I think that each of the future battles is a lot more meaningful because the enemies have more abilities, they're stronger, you have to think more about them. So I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to cover each of the different enemies in a separate video, because fighting each battle heavily depends on the enemy you're playing against, which is why a lot of the stuff I'm going to say is going to revolve around context of between each of the specific monsters or enemies, and that's going to change how you handle certain situations. So first off is the Globerries, essentially the guys that hit you for HP values and restore health. Now, in this fight specifically, the berry witches are actually going to be more of a afterthought, and the earth berries are going to be your main target, obviously because they deal more damage. So you're going to want to focus them first. The first thing I will say, first tip, is always play your companions first. You always want to get your companions on the board because it helps reduce their turn timers. And getting them attacking faster just means you'll be able to get ramped up faster. Second thing is you always want to think about what the enemy is doing first and who the enemy is hitting. So you can, if you're in doubt, you can hover over them and it'll show a target on who they're going to hit. But if your heroes or companions are ever in danger, that's something that should always be in the forefront of your mind. How can I keep each of my companions and each of my heroes alive and have them take the least damage possible? So think about that before you think about, oh, like I want to deal damage with this card, or oh, I want to buff my hero this way, etc., etc. So that being said, in this turn, obviously, the enemies are still quite a bit away from attacking, so I can kind of do what I want here and plan for future turns. Now, given this character, you deal 4 additional damage to damage targets, so I want to make sure I damage these guys so I can take advantage of that. And that should come ahead of my Flame Water, because getting this passive ability off will obviously do more damage than just a single Flame Water. So with that being said, I'm just going to hit this guy for 2 damage. And the reason I'm opting to use Scrappy Sword instead of my Snow Stick here is because Snow Stick, with its added 2 Frost ability, is really good in stalling opponents. But in this case, my hero is going to hit before he does, so I don't actually need to stall him at all. So I'm just going to do that, hit once. So this upcoming turn, my hero will kill this guy, and Snoof will hit Berry Witch. So again, in this case, I'm going to use my Scrappy Sword again for the same reason, just to deal more damage here. It is also important to note that your companions or your party, actually the enemy as well, will attack from top to bottom and then go to the next column. So if my heroes were here, they would attack 1, 2, and if you had like multiple people, they would go 1, 2, then go to this next column, but top row, and attack 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's an important thing about. You can visualize this too. If you hit this I button towards the top right, I think when you're new, if this can be important just so you make sure you know who's attacking what and what's happening when. I forgot to say this earlier, but my biggest tip is always to take your time with each of the turns. Hey guys, Future Rocco here again, and honestly I might be making more cameos in these videos as I go back and realize I said stuff and took too long or I didn't explain things clearly, but I really cannot overemphasize the importance of taking your time with each turn. Each turn matters because you might find that if you take some of your earlier turns lackadaisically, you'll often suffer consequences that you can't do anything about in later turns. So like if you set up a character and then realize you can't keep them alive, then you'll have wasted turns. If you realize that you needed to kill a certain enemy and you instead buffed your own character and lost the ability to kill that enemy, you could take a lot of unnecessary damage. There's just a lot that goes into each turn, and you should really think about what's going on and what's going to happen in future turns. If you don't kill an enemy, or if you kill enemy A versus enemy B, it really does make a big difference. So I would, among my tips, this is definitely my #1 most important thing, is just take your time and be patient. It's hard, I know, and you're going to miss things, you're going to forget, which I still do as well, but you want to try to be as thorough as possible to prevent silly mistakes from happening as much as possible. So in this turn, I'm just gonna snow stick him again to kill him. Pretty simple. Now, I would say, especially as a beginner, always take these extra wave battle times if you have them, and just use them to buff your heroes, do whatever you want. Don't click them early. Unless you really have nothing to do, you can click it early, but otherwise you can definitely prep your turns. Another reason to click them early would be if your heroes and companions are about to attack, actually. It might be worth clicking early and summoning enemies so that their attacks don't go to waste. But in this situation, my heroes weren't going to attack, so it's not a big deal, and buying one turn of time actually makes it so that their timers go down perfectly in sync with everybody else. Now, for the sake of demonstration, I am not going to snow this goblin, but I would say once you get more experienced and you're more confident in your ability to beat these battles, hitting the goblin actually matters a lot for that extra gold, for reasons I will explain later, but obviously more gold is better. But in this case, I will hit the redraw bell. Another tip I will give you is that when hitting the redraw bell, I know the game says you can hit it at any point in time, but you really want to only be hitting this redraw bell when you get it for free. And I mentioned this before, but each turn matters, right? So if you're spending a turn hitting the redraw bell, and it costs you a turn, that's one turn where you can't play a card, you can't play out a companion, you're not doing damage. That's a major loss of tempo. And in this game, tempo is everything. So again, companions first. I'm going to play my companion first. I forgot to explain this, but the reason I ordered these guys was because Snoop's going to deal damage first based on turn order, then Freewell. So Freewell will get that additional damage bonus. So now in this, going back to what I said earlier as well, first, before you play every card, you want to think, what is the enemy going to do? How is the enemy going to hit? So I'll just show an example, but even though these guys are not attacking, I want my hero generally in the back to keep him the safest, and you want your tankiest guy in the front. So in case you forget anything, hopefully your hero and your squishy commands will be fine because they'll be in the back. But like here, I'm going to put my companion first again. And having Pooty here also allows him to tank a hit for us, and his ability activates when he dies. Like, his whole point is to be destroyed. So we unfortunately do want him to die. And yeah, so we'll put him here. Now, this guy has apply 4 snow, and he has the ability launch out, which will hit the person furthest in the back. Now, snow is actually really annoying. It's among the top enemy abilities you should watch out for because, again, it loses you tempo, which is key. And so you want to avoid getting snowed through on your most important characters. So I would say in this scenario, my least important character is probably Bomb Bomb. Even though he does a lot of damage with Barrage, which hits all of the enemies in the row, he can afford to tank a hit, and it's not the end of the world if he gets snowed. That being said, obviously it'd be really nice if he didn't, but you can't. Sometimes you have to understand that things don't. You have to make some sacrifices, and knowing when and how is very important. But yeah, so this turn I'm going to focus on just dealing damage, I guess. So I think I'll hit this guy once. Oh, cool. So that extra frenzy went onto my hero, which is actually really, really lucky. So let's see. I guess I'll count down. Oh, I actually can't count. Note to self: I haven't done this in a long time either, but you can't use cards that count down your team's turn timers if they are frozen. So very important to know. That's why freeze is so important, or so strong. So in this case, I'm just going to summon a Woodhead because I have nothing better to do. I would say don't use Sunrod and other abilities that count down turn timers when your team is about to attack. So when they have this 1, don't use the countdown items because it's better saved for future uses. Because going from 1 to 0 just means they attack faster in that turn, as opposed to saving an actual turn, because they're going to attack anyways. It does matter if the enemy is going to hit you first, because the turn order is always enemies attack first, and then your team attacks. So if you have an enemy about to hit you, and you're also at 1, using a countdown reducing card can make sense because you'll hit the enemy first. And if you can kill them, that's beautiful. That's exactly when you want to use it. Otherwise, you want to save it when your turn timer is not at 1. So to show you an example, this guy's going to escape from the battle, right? But in order to prevent that, I can actually snow him and hit him with Snoof if I use my Sunrod. So I'll do this here. And yeah, it'll get me some free gold and a hit in. This time I'll summon a character because I know I can redraw here too, but getting more characters on the board never hurts. It's extra people to tank for you. Now, when Queen Globerry comes out, she always summons a Berry Witch, I'm pretty certain. And in these scenarios, you want to actually deal with the Berry Witch first, because otherwise the Queen will just keep regenerating HP. And because the Queen is only attacking once, you can actually use your other wooden characters to tank her hits. And by the time you run out of wooden characters, you should be, like, the Queen should be dead. So I'm going to focus on killing these minions first. And I'll summon a Woodhead up here for future tanking. It's okay that he's getting hit. It's totally fine. Again, I will say, number one thing is what is the enemy team doing and what is your team doing thereafter. So think, what is the enemy team doing? Then what do you want to do to counteract it? And how are you going to set yourself up so that you deal the most damage to the right targets in the future? Turn timer always matters. So you want to hit the you generally want to hit targets with lower turn times first, unless certain fights will have stronger enemies in general, which I will get to in future videos. You want to think about combos later after you're able to consistently win fights, because combo kills, if you kill people in the same turn, they'll get you more gold, but it's harder to coordinate as opposed to just killing them. So yeah, so this guy free will just try to kill Berry Witch here. So in that case, I'm going to freeze Queen Globerry to stop her from attacking longer. So yeah, so now as you see, this fight's become pretty basic. I'm just going to freeze her again. This is basically unlosable at this point. So I'm just going to keep smacking her here. Give my hero this. And that'll be the kill. So yeah, that's the Globerries. There are obviously, you'll see different opponents, and hopefully I'll have a video on whichever one you're having a hard time with. But more videos to come. I will also have different videos that explain like route selection, for example, companion selection, card selection, what to buy at shops, etc., etc. But that's it for this video. Hopefully you found that helpful. Again, most important thing is, what's the enemy doing? How can you keep your heroes and your team safe so that nobody dies? And then given that nobody is dying or taking negative effects, what can you do to maximize your output on the enemies for future turns? And then another very key tip is, when thinking about the redraw bell, do your best to not use the redraw bell unless you can use it for free. It's a really big tempo loss, and you always want to be playing as many cards as possible during each of your turns. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you found that a little bit useful. I will be explaining more of my thought process in future battle videos too. So if you feel like you want to see more with different enemies and how that works, my future videos will also repeat some of the same concepts, as well as go into more specific battle-based tips.